It's the final word World Cup Daily Men's T20 World Cup 2024, day 17, the final day of the group stage, although we'll be dealing with a couple of games from night 16 as well. Adam Collins and Geoff Lemon back with you for that. And what we're going to do to start with here, 3 games in one show, we're going to summarise one of them. New Zealand, PNG, the last game in that group. Geoff, let at it. 30 seconds, go.
Probably more notable than the game is that Trent Boult has retired from playing for the Black Caps and that Lockie Ferguson bowled 4 overs without conceding a run. Those are probably the most interesting headline moments from this game, where Papua New Guinea got bowled out for 78. Everybody took a bunch of wickets. Ferguson 3 for none. And it was another pretty uncompetitive outing from PNG, who haven't had a great World Cup after they pushed West Indies in their first game. New Zealand chased it down 3 wickets down with Mitchell and Kane Williamson there at the end. Honestly, not much point trying to touch on much else specifically in the game, where there wasn't anything to play for. New Zealand were poor enough to not beat West Indies when they should have. Even after they got smashed by Afghanistan in game 1, they still could have come back into things had they beaten West Indies, where they were well on top in that game and didn't manage to do it. And in this game, there wasn't a great deal to play for, except for just wanting to end on a slightly more positive note. But it's still going to be a pretty disconsolate exit for New Zealand, and quite a sad end, really, to such an amazing international career for Trent Boult, who opened the bowling with Tim Southee for the last time. They bowled the first 4 overs together, swung the ball around. Southee got an early wicket, and Trent Boult got some late and finished off with a Yorker. His last delivery for New Zealand was a classic left arm, pinpoint, fully pitched ball of the sort that he's delivered so many of over his long international career.
Yeah, 317 test wickets, 211 one-day international wickets, and he'll finish with 83 in T20 internationals, or T20s international, at better than 22 at a strike rate of 16.5 in the shortest form. So what Boult and Southee have done in tandem, I like that as well, that they started together. Those 4 overs, swinging the ball around, as I've probably said a million times on this podcast, the Lennon-McCartney of swing bowling, as they certainly were back in that 2015 World Cup. That stands out to me, that pair in concert, the way they bowled to get New Zealand to that final when they were established but still emerging as a duo. And look, it's the right time. It's the right time for Trent Boult to make way. I also think it's the right time for Tim Southee to make way, not for any other reason than the fact that they need to find some space to rebuild a little bit. They've been a side that's overperformed relative to what we expect on paper at World Cups, and that's great. It's been a brilliant ride to go on. The fact that they made it to the 2015 50-over World Cup final, likewise the 2021 20-over World Cup final. They got to the semis last year in Australia, having started in such smashing form against the Aussies. But it does feel like we've reached a tipping point. I'd say the same for Kane Williamson in 20-over cricket. That was tough to watch him bat today. Ian Smith on commentary said he's been here 3 weeks and he's not timed to ball, and I think he's just about right. And there's other factors as well, that New Zealand started their campaign nearly a week after America played that opener against Canada. They played on the Friday night, 6 full days later. And when they got behind the curve, losing so badly to Afghanistan, they were already 1 foot on the plane. So, they win the last game. PNG, as it's been for a lot of sides who've been eliminated from associate ranks, they struggled in their last encounter. That wasn't surprising. New Zealand's class shone through. Some fun statistical stuff that we'll come to in a sec on Lockie Ferguson that you referenced in the summary. But, I guess the one good thing about this format, I reckon you can count on one hand how many true dead rubbers there have been out of a lot more group games than what we've experienced before. So even the games where one side have been out, there's still been something to play for, like it was with the Dutch and Sri Lanka last night. But today, much as it was yesterday with Pakistan and Ireland, they're not going to be releasing commemorative DVDs of this one.
No, and I suppose that's where the Ferguson statistical quirk comes into it. He's player of the match for that performance, and that became the main point of interest. Is would Lockie Ferguson be able to get through a spell without conceding a run? So not the best figures ever in T20 internationals, because you count those by wickets taken. So the best ever is 7 wickets for 8 runs for Malaysia against China. But the cheapest figures are 4 overs. We did talk about that only about 10 days ago when we were looking at a Uganda game. It was also against PNG when Franklin Sabuga conceded 4 runs and took 2 wickets. So he took 2 for 4 in his 4 overs. And we were looking at that. we were looking at the handful of cheaper performances in T20 international cricket. And the only player who'd ever gone runless through a bowling spell was Saad bin Safar, who's here as the captain of Canada at this T20 World Cup, who took 2 for none from 4 overs against Panama, who are not really up there with the powerhouses of world cricket. So Lockie Ferguson goes past that. He has the best none for in T20 international cricket with his 3 for none. And it was quite interesting, really, because he takes a wicket with his first ball. Asad Vala edges into slip. And then Stacey Boult, who's been one of the more impressive performers for PNG in this series, just couldn't lay bat on him. Ferguson bowls 2 overs to Stacey Boult after that. So 11 balls. Only 3 of them even hit the bat. Stacey Boult misses the other 8. He's wafting his bat around everywhere. Can't lay bat on it. And then later in the innings, Ferguson comes back. He gets a wicket with the second ball of his over when he comes back. He gets Charles Amini, who's trying to pull a ball that keeps low in his LBW. And then his 4th over, Ferguson also gets a wicket, second ball, when the new Chad Soper, chops on and he's bowled. And so Hiri and Kipling Doriga are the other 2 batters who are trying to lay bat on him and can't. And the only scoring off his 4 overs was 2 leg byes that come off the thigh pad. So those don't go against the bowler, which means it's still a wicket maiden. So 3 of his 4 overs were wicket maidens. The other was just a maiden, and he ends up with that 3 for none. Pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, look, even though he's only 1 year younger than Trent Boult, and just to come back to my earlier theme, I feel like this is Lockie Ferguson's attack now, right? Like, whatever comes next for New Zealand when they remodel the T20 side, which is always the way when a side does poorly at a World Cup, there's a bit of a revamp, and New Zealand haven't experienced that for a while, but it just feels to me like he's, by some margin, their most dynamic bowler. And you look at the irregularity of this. There have been, what did you say there? There have been four nunfers when they've bowled 4 overs. So 4 times there have been 4 maidens for a bowler in T20s international.
So I think only twice. There have only been 2 times it's been a full nunfer. So that's Ferguson and Saad bin Safar.
Okay, right. So 2 of them, I read on social media, there have been 58 T20 international hat-tricks. So we think of the hat-trick being such a rarity. This is far more unusual. And it falls on the same day we've seen that we mentioned on another program we recorded earlier today that we've seen the fastest 100 in T20s international today by an Estonian against Cyprus in 27 balls. Well, the fact that something as unusual as 4 maidens has occurred in a World Cup too on the same day, I think that's a noteworthy occurrence as well.
Yep. So all up, a bit of a concessionary performance from PNG. It was a couple of wickets early, just sort of throwing the bat around, and Tony Ura slashing Southey away at the backward point. There were wickets later in the innings from players backing away and just having a swing. So Norman Vanua slogged a catch up in the air, so did Ale Now. Kipling Doriga and Hiri were both out backing away and trying to carve the ball and missing it, and it ended with a stumping. So it was a surrender, really, from a team that was a bit tired and a bit over it, perhaps, and a bit overawed by where they'd found themselves. But they did pick themselves up to take a couple of wickets early. So Kabuka Morea, right off the top, he gets Finn Allen caught behind, bottom edge, swing across the line, well caught by the wicketkeeper, and then he gets Rachin Ravindra caught at deep mid-wicket, and Conway makes 35 to do most of the job of the chase. But he's LBW to Semo Kamiya towards the end. So a little something for PNG to go away with, to feel a little better about themselves, having taken a few wickets and, getting good players out. It doesn't really matter what the context is. That's something that a player can hang their hat on, and can go away from this tournament saying, okay, I'm good enough to get Devon Conway out. I can take that confidence into my next series, my next qualification tournament, and try to get back to a stage like this and next time acquit themselves better, because it has been really disappointing for PNG. The fact they lost to Uganda, who've been clearly the weakest side in the comp, and PNG are a side who are supposed to be on the up, who are talked up as being one of the next big things, and they just haven't displayed that in this World Cup, aside from half of that game against West Indies when they were in it to begin with.
Yeah, like it is with a lot of associates who are on the way up. It's their bowling that's more capable than their batting. And look, I thought the way Morea bowled off the top was really significant. Like, he ends up with 2 for 4 from 2.2 overs. And look, when you get to this stage of a tournament and you're bowing out anyway, and you're trying to think about what's going to happen in, let's say, 2026, it is about the marginal gains. We've seen that with sides in 50-over World Cups when it gets towards the end and there's no way they can qualify, and then someone does something that's noteworthy, and that can be the springboard to making a more substantial contribution down the track. As Matullah from Afghanistan last year, it was fairly unlikely that they'd be able to make it to the semi-finals from where they were in the group stage, but he got better and better throughout that, and now, not even 12 months on, he's a genuine match winner for Afghanistan at age 22.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to see, I hope, from PNG players and their bowlers especially, who at times have applied pressure. You go back to that Windies game, Asad Vala, the way he played on the first day, Ali Neo as well. We did see moments, Sese Bao, and that half century he made on that opening weekend, the game we were covering from Dallas.
And Chad Soper's bowling in that game as well.
Chad Soper's bowling in that game. There have been bits, there have been glimmer, there have been moments of hope, and that's what they'll take away from this competition. And they won't be the first associate nation to walk away from a World Cup without winning, who are much, much better for the run. So, today outmatched, and often is pace too, isn't it? Talking about their batting, Ferguson was just too quick for them because they're not facing bowlers who are sending it down at the better part of 150 clicks. It is a notable difference to what they're typically seeing in associate cricket, and you can't. Doesn't matter how quick you put the bowling machine on. It doesn't. It's different to when you're facing a human being with the volatility of a human compared to a bowling machine at 150 in the same spot every ball.
Yeah, and it's no wonder that there were a lot of fresh air shots, and it was mostly outside the off stump and sort of cut shots and trying to catch up with it with uppercuts, and Ferguson just kept bowling that shorter length for the most part and bouncing it over the top of the bat. So I think we should do Nepal, Bangladesh with Netherlands, Sri Lanka, and sort of roll them into one, given they were together. So maybe let's come to those after the break. Worth a word for our buddies at Westfield, because it is the middle of summer. Midsummer is everywhere, they say. A Midsummer Night's Dream features the hilariously named Bottom and Puck. Always good for a giggle, William Shakespeare. There's that TV show that your parents like where people are always getting murdered despite living in the smallest town in England. Or is a midsummer how Gen Z would describe a bang average season with the bat or ball? Good, very good there. Not if you're a flaxen-haired Nordic type with a flower headband and a flowing dress, because it's the best time of the year. You can soak up Scandinavian vibes at the Alondi Terrace Midsummer Party. Celebrate the longest day of the year. That's what it's all about. It's about the solstice. Celebrate the longest day of the year with summery food and booze, and you can even make your own flower crown. How lovely. More info and tickets online, Westfield Stratford City, because there's more to Scandi style than meatballs and Allen keys.
It's nicely put, and I have felt that today, Geoff. We've had the first, what I would call, proper summer's date, belated 17th of June, but we're only 4 days away from the longest day. So the Euros have started. People will be in the pubs till late at night. You know what it's like this time of year, Geoff, where it's still sunny at like 9:45, and it's the nicest place in the world. We're getting that at London right now. So I'm going to spend plenty of time at Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City through this lovely time of the year. Let's take a break. On the other side of it, the games from last night that settled the other group. Final Word Daily, Adam Collins and Geoff Lemon, day 17. Back to night 16. There were two games going on that had a lot riding on them as we were trying to work out whether it would be the Netherlands, unlikely as it was from where they were, who were going to go through, or Bangladesh. Neither side had achieved that before, going from, I would say, that the stage of the tournament where there is about this many teams, or as many as 12 when it was in Australia a couple of years ago. I know they're only reducing it to 8, but I felt like there was a lot riding on this for Bangladesh, and boy, they were hard held. Nepal, especially when the ball started spinning and the wrong ones were fizzing, and they were all out for just over 100. It did feel like there could be the upset, but it's been the class of Bangladesh's bowlers, Geoff, throughout the tournament. Their batting's not yet fired properly, but they did against Sri Lanka, but that was a low-scoring game. But they held their nerve with the bat there down in Dallas. But it's their bowling. They've got all bases covered. They're going to be tricky as pitches continue to spin.
Well, and a lot of it's been about Tanzim Hassan Shakib, who's not one of the high-profile players who's come into this side as a sort of mid-20s inexperienced seamer without that great a domestic record in 20-over cricket, and has dominated, took 4 for 7 here today, and really pretty early derailed any hope that Nepal were going to chase this 106. But they started off so well. It was quite a fun night in a way, because I was doing commentary for the Netherlands-Sri Lanka game, but that started an hour after, I think, the or maybe 30 minutes after, 45 minutes after the Nepal-Bangladesh game. So we could see that Bangladesh were in trouble, and we knew that Bangladesh losing would open the door for the Dutch and would mean that they would have to chase something not in the full 20 overs to try to make up net run rate. So it was all rolling together as there's a wicket first ball of the innings, Nepal bowling. So Tanzit Hassan charges and pulls and top edges it back to the bowler. So Sompal Kami is the bowler who takes the wicket, the seamer. And he gets Lytton Das then, who slogs across the line and hits a high top edge that the keeper comes around to get. And that's after Irie, the off spinner, has bowled Shanto for 4. So they're 3 down for 21. They're 4 down for 30 when Taurid Kridoy top edges a slog sweep into the deep off Rohit Padal. And then Shakib runs out Mahmudullah, and then Shakib's LBW himself to Padal again for 17. So they were in absolutely all sorts. A bit of slogging down the order from Rashad Hussain and Tuscan Ahmed got them past 100 and was significant in the end. They're much better chance they're losing the game without those late runs. But once they got to 106, I felt reasonably confident that they would have enough, given how we saw Nepal struggle in the chase against Sri Lanka, and just given the bowling variety that Bangladesh have got. And as we said, Tanzim Hassan Shakib just comes out and rips through their top order.
Yeah, you're not winning many games of cricket when your high score's 17, and that was it for Bangladesh with Shakib, who is no longer the captain, but he's still the leader, if you know what I mean, on the field. I know Shanto's doing a good job and got them through to this Super 8 stage, but Shakib's still the top dog and the senior pro. And, when it came to their chance to bowl, there was that partnership down the list for Nepal, which just for a moment there, I think it was for the 5th wicket. They were at one stage, they were 24 for 4. No, sorry, they were 26 for 5. Then they get
it was a 52-run stand. It was significant. Yeah. That was Irie, the spinner, who took the wicket earlier, and Kushal Mala, and they batted for a long time as well. So they took it quite deep. And while they were still there, we thought, okay, they might do this at 5 down. But eventually they both fell to Mustafiza, and that opened things up to be finished off very quickly.
And what a step that Mustafiza's taken in this tournament. We all know what he can do in franchise cricket. We all know the pressure that's been on his shoulders since he was a very young man. But the wicket maiden in the 19th over, the last chance Nepal had was gone at that juncture, and finishes with the immaculate figures of 3 for 7 from 4. And Tanzim Hassan Shakib, I mentioned the spin of Bangladesh a moment ago. That was the wrong depiction. What I really mean is pace on, pace off. Their seamers have both bases covered with Tanzim's quick enough. He gets up in the low 140s, but he rips his fingers down the seam with his slower ball. And Mustafiza is one of the best in the world at doing just that. And they complement it with the Tashkin Ahmed went for a few runs last night, but took an important wicket at a crucial time down the list. Rashid Hussain's bowled nicely with his leg breaks throughout the group stage. And I've already mentioned Shakib Al Hassan, who finishes with 2 for 9 and did eventually break up the partnership that we referred to before. So, look, Bangladesh, I'm kind of bullish about if they can just get their batting right. And we have seen their ceilings pretty high with the bat in T20 cricket. They've just not fired yet. So of all the 8 teams to make the second round, I reckon they've got the most amount of improvement in them with the bat from what we've seen in the group stage. And their bowling, no dramas whatsoever.
Well, I hope so. I hope you're right. I have a lot less faith that it's going to come good. It just feels like they've managed to stumble their way through when they could have lost basically every game that they've played. And, they managed to crawl over the line against Sri Lanka, and they probably should have lost maybe one of the others as well. I don't know. They're not convincing me at this point in time. That's all I'm going to go with. And the Dutch had a moment. The Dutch had a little bit there where Viv Kingma comes in and he gets a wicket in the first over, second ball of the match. It's slashed down to deep third, so Nasanka's gone, and then Kamindo Mendes looks okay, and then cuts Paul Van Meeker into point where he's caught for 17. So they were 2 for 39 at that point and going along relatively slowly, sort of run a ball through the power play. But then Kusal Mendes just played a gem. He hadn't had a lot of the strike up until the point where the second wicket fell. So it felt like he'd been there for a long time without scoring, but he was actually scoring at a good rate even at that stage. He goes on to 46 off 29, and that just really lit the touch paper for Sri Lanka. And suddenly everyone else started going more aggressive. So Dhananjaya makes a quick 34. Sharath Dasalanka comes in and monsters them, hits 5 sixes, including one that was literally out of the ground, hit the roof at St. Lucia and bounced out of the ground into the night. 46 off 21. Big Angelo comes in towards the end and bangs 30 off 15. Hasaranga comes in and scores 20 off 6. That's after Shanak has been out. First ball, by the way. So Logan Van Beek gets Lanka, sigh of relief, and then bowls a nice little nibbler that takes the outside edge of Shanaka first ball, but can't take the hat trick. And Hasaranga then punishes them with 20 off 6 towards the end with a couple more sixes. Like, the ball was absolutely flying out of the stadium. They hit, 11 sixes on the night? And suddenly this team that's been so poor with the bat and so disappointing with the bat through this series just clicked, and they were bombing it. And it was very, I sort of saw Chris Silver with the coach wandering around afterwards, and a kind of rueful look to him. I would guess, I would project that he's thinking, where the hell was that a few days ago or a week ago, when it might have taken us into the next stage of this comp, and batting like that could upset anything.
Yeah, 10 of the 11 sixes came in the last 8 overs. So when they get Kusal, it is 84 for 3 in the 12th over. Like, they're trending towards, about a 180 type score. And that would have been with the afterburners on, but they just stuck the landing brilliantly in a way that Sri Lanka have failed to do in the tournament so far. Such a big fan of Asalanka when he gets going. I'm so pleased to see he was the guy that pongoed them everywhere, including that one on the roof. There was such a big emphasis on hitting with the wind or against the wind on commentary. And obviously not being there, it's hard to tell how strong it is, but it must have been blowing an absolute gale, because when it's like catching a wave. Some of those sixes that caught the breeze went so long. I've seen sixes land up on that roof before at St. Lucia when I covered the Women's World Cup there in 2018. It's not a massive boundary, but yeah, a couple of those went 90 plus metres, and Angelo Matthews still showing that he's got a place as a much older player, but so much experience as a finisher. But even with all of that, that everything needed to go right for the Dutch. And by the time they walked out to bat, they would have known that their campaign was over, owing to what was going on in the Bangladesh-Nepal game over in...
It wasn't quite finished yet. I think that was during the 6th wicket partnership. So at that point, Nepal were hanging in there, and they were thinking they might be a chance. But I think that the deal was that they needed Nepal to win with a couple of overs to spare, and it had become obvious that wasn't going to happen. Right. And they also needed to chase in about 15 or 16 overs what Sri Lanka had got. So, had they delivered on the early promise and been able to hold Sri Lanka to 150, 160, they might have been a chance to mow it down in 15 or 16 overs. But as it was, they weren't going to get 200 that quickly. It just didn't feel like one of those nights. Although they started well. Michael Levitt, who's impressive, the 20-year-old, and Max O'Dowd. Max O'Dowd's often not very aggressive off the top. He did start aggressively, and Levitt even more so. So they hit 4 sixes between them, 45 off the first 4.5 overs. So they were at the rate. They were at the 10 and over that they needed. But it did feel like once a wicket fell, that would tip things. And also, as that innings wears on, word comes through that they're not going to progress anyway. So I think that would have taken any enthusiasm out of the dressing room, really. And once O'Dowd gets out and then Levitt gets out soon afterwards, it's pretty much a subsidence from that point, although Edwards bats through most of the innings and makes 31.
I think ended up like 3 stumpings, a run out. They were giving it everything. I mean, Vikramjit Singh's dismissal is emblematic, really, just trying his best to clear the ropes and getting a fat top edge. And in Levitt, they found one, right? I mean, Sybran Engelbrecht, has announced his retirement after this game, and he makes that amazing stop on the boundary, which will be in my Hall of Fame nominations later. But, that's the thing, isn't it? Levitt's 15 years younger than Engelbrecht, and now he'll get his chance, more space in the side as they revamp under presumably Scott Edwards. I see no reason why he wouldn't continue to lead this side, but they'll be disappointed having had an opportunity in this group with Sri Lanka faltering, that they've not been able to get over the line. If they beat South Africa, in all probability, they would have found a way to the Super 8s, which would have been massive for them. But all told, it hasn't quite worked with the bat. And we know a lot about this side now. We've seen them play in 3 World Cups in the space of 2 years, Geoff. We saw them perform really quite well in Australia and winning their last game against South Africa in 2022. They did more than passably at the 2023 50-over World Cup. There were 4 or 5 games they could have won. I think they finished with 2 wins, but it could have been better than that. And they'll leave this feeling disappointed that trajectory hasn't continued. But they'll go again as one of these senior associate nations who now expect to be at World Cups, and rightly so.
Yeah, I suppose that's right. When they look back at that 50-over World Cup, they beat South Africa and Sri Lanka, wasn't it? And they should have beaten Bangladesh and a couple others they were in. So it's been the story for almost every side, really, in this World Cup, aside from maybe PNG and Uganda. Even PNG should have won that game we talked about earlier with the West Indies, or they could have. They were in the hunt for a while, but I suppose that's the level up that you've got to make to be to be a team at that next step up is to go from being in contention for a while to actually sealing that and finishing it off. I suppose we should come to the Hall of Fame. I'd
Yes.
like to nominate Paul Rifle for the decision when Finn Allen was caught behind the bottom edge, taken by the keeper. Big appeal, nothing doing. Everyone else appeals again, nothing doing. And then about 15 seconds later, Rifle goes, you know what, I think that's out, and pops the finger up. It may have been the longest consideration of any decision that I've ever seen.
No one's ever going to rush Paul Rifle. I think that's for sure.
Mm.
Engelbrecht, last act. I've dropped it into the weekly show as well, but that amazing stop off Angelo Matthews that's gone viral last night. A nice way to remind people what a tremendous athlete he was. Loved everything about Nepal's crowds. They rocked up at every game they played. They made so much bloody noise. When they were on a roll, when the spinners were doing the job in the middle overs against Bangladesh, that really was something. So where they go next is unclear, but the support for cricket and the support for this Nepalese men's side is incredible. So that's one of the success stories of this World Cup, seeing them here, and hopefully they're back in a couple of years' time. And when it was tight, watching the way Shakib was patrolling things in the field and his body language and that cheeky grin that he always has no matter what he's doing, I know I'm more bullish on Bangladesh than you are, but now they've got to this stage, I think that's quite significant. So that rounds out my Hall of Fame, and there's one more group game that we will do tomorrow, Geoff. Tomorrow, day 18, there is no cricket. That's the breather before the Super 8s begin. So we'll do a wider preview of the two groups and how that's going to break down with the 8 sides to the left, and we'll also talk about the Windies-Afghanistan game. So we've had all these dead rubbers, Geoff, and I suppose this one is as well, because we know that the preordained seedings are going to be what they're going to be. But the Windies and Afghanistan both going through, and a chance to, I suppose, make a bit of a statement, and one of them will go through undefeated.
I guess there's that, and it's going to be a home game for West Indies. It's here tonight at the time of recording, so I'll be on commentary for that, which I'm looking forward to tremendously, because it's packed out, it's sold out. I've been talking to some of the staff around here, and people are saying they wanted tickets and they couldn't get them. They're unfindable at this point. So there is excitement about it on the ground. There is that home crowd feel, and you've got two belting teams who have been playing really well on a high-scoring surface. You know, we saw the Australia-Scotland game and then what Sri Lanka were able to do. So it should be a more high-octane sort of occasion than those that we've seen so far.
Brilliant. Okay, this has been day 17, Final Word Daily for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. Between now and tomorrow's daily, you'll get our weekly episode as well. If you're watching us on YouTube and you don't subscribe to the podcast feed, jump on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere for that matter, and you can listen to all of our longer eps as well. Until then, have nice nights, have nice days. Enjoy the cricket this evening from St. Lucia, and we'll talk to you again on Tuesday.
All right, see ya.